Hi, everyone. Welcome to another conversation that will be our next episode of Get Jashed, the podcast. If you guys are watching this live on YouTube right now, I would like to acknowledge that I know I said last episode that I would be, doing another couple of these. I was about to say live from New York, but live from New York when I was there. And I just want to say sometimes things don't go to plan, not in a bad way. And it's actually inspired today's topic for this conversation, for this episode, because sometimes you just have to tend to what you need to tend to in order to create more of what it is that you need. So just trying to decide where to start. I think I'll start with New York because we are going to get into the 2 almost 3 weeks since I've been back as well, just in terms of this topic and the lesson here. So in New York, once I landed, part of what I needed was sleep. So I prioritized sleep because if you've ever traveled overseas, you get this anyway, but if you've ever traveled that particular length of journey, which was the traveling part was all up around 24 hours itself, more if you include getting to the airport early, and then by the time you get out of the airport and get to the hotel, it ended up being about 30 plus hours with zero sleep, unfortunately for me. So that's just something that happened, not through lack of trying, but I ended up just not sleeping on the flight at all, but particularly the flight that I was meant to be sleeping on if I was going to kind of try and acclimate time zones, which I was trying to do because I think I'm clever like that, but something else is cleverer than me. So I didn't end up sleeping for over 30 hours. I don't know exactly what it was by the time I went to bed, but somewhere between 30 and 35, let's say. And the reason I got to New York, so I went for an event, and the reason I got there, it was really like a week earlier, was because I had university sessions. So I am doing my master's in applied positive psychology, and I had 2 sessions a week apart from each other. So there were 2 of the weekly sessions, 2 of the 8 sessions in total that my 2 subjects were requiring were going to be while I was in New York. And that happened to be New York time at 2 a.m. And then daylight savings kicked in for Melbourne, which is I'm with University of Melbourne. I don't live there, but I'm doing it online. So daylight savings kicked in. So then it was 1 a.m. the following week, New York time. So I needed, there is a thread here, right? I needed to get to New York because I know that I get a little bit of the kind of jet lag where I sleep through alarms. That happens to me when I travel east. Having said that, I have been to New York before, but I haven't been directly to New York in the way, like I went via Vancouver, but like I haven't made New York the first real stop. I've been there before after 3 weeks of traveling already, so I was already acclimated. This is important because it changed what was actually happening for my sleep that I didn't expect. I wasn't sleeping in, I was waking up at 4 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. for hours. So I didn't know this at the time that I booked, but I arrived a few days early because I knew that I needed to be able to and be functional enough, be through the worst part of jet lag enough to be able to get up for that first 2 a.m. session for 3.5 hours and still be functional. So I arrived when I did, and that's what I did for myself because it was based on a need. It was based on exactly what I needed to do in order to function, in order to show up in the way that I needed to, that I chose to, but I needed to, based on that choice. So that was that decision. Then while I was there, I realized, especially after that first uni session, that I just reset all of my hard work trying to acclimate to the new time zone. So, or assimilate, there's a word, but so really I was kind of jet lagged for a week, which was fun. But that's what I was spending time doing. And then while I was there, I was being really present and I was connecting with my email list. I think I sent maybe just as many, if not more, but just as many emails to my email list in that 2 weeks than I have all year, maybe off the top of my head. So I was doing what I needed to do. And what I found when I was there was I needed to be present. I needed to be creative. And I needed to, apart from, or maybe because of the times that I was already in front of a screen between 2 and 5:30 in the morning, a few days in, I needed to not be on a screen or recording. I needed to be internal. So it's not really making excuses. It's just to explain, this is all what happened. And then I had the training. Well, I had a bit of a head cold and then I had the training and then I had an integration day that was very, very important. And then I flew home and I arrived home 2 weeks later. It was a big 2 weeks. Actually, the 2 weeks I was there was big, but also the 2 weeks since, big too. So I want you to just sort of notice that as we go into this second part, right? You're doing what you need to do based on what you need most. You're choosing something or prioritizing something based on what you need most. So when I got back, I came back to 2 more assessments left for the semester, 2 more due that I still need to start, because while I logged in for those uni sessions and I did the pre-work for those uni sessions, I did not do any assignment work. And I knew that was the plan. I'd allowed enough time, or it was also fortuitous as well. So I came back and went, all right, I need to get my ass into gear, my A into G, and just head down, get this stuff done, because I have less time, enough, but less time for these last 2 assessments than I had for the middle 2 assessments that I actually got done and submitted a week or 2 weeks prior to when they were due because I was going to be traveling. So then the next 2 weeks, I could have gone into a state of overwhelm very, very easily because I was, I was back to work, I was back to all my hours, I was back to two of the biggest assessments this semester. So the 2 biggest assessments this semester I was back to, which were research-based and create whole wellbeing plans and research. And I was returning to gym for the first time in 3 months post-surgery, which was very exciting for me. But it was an element, another thing in my schedule on top of everything else. Here is the lesson. This has all been the build up to the lesson, don't worry, but here is the crux of the lesson. I had an opportunity come in, kind of an opportunity, a potential, something that I wanted to explore that I still wanted to explore. But that was presented to me in those 2 weeks, and I really wanted to just dive into it because it's exciting, because it's, oh, I need to think about this and I want to get that rolling. And my ADHD brain would want me to do that. Here's one of the rare beauties of having autism and ADHD at once. It's not always a beauty or a beautiful experience, but here's one of the rare benefits of this. Sometimes when my ADHD brain would want to, and this is just simplifying it, this could have happened without neurodivergency involved, but when my ADHD brain wanted to dive into this new thing that felt really good, it's something that's sort of been on my radar for my whole life, more or less. And I now have an opportunity to explore that. I wanted to dive into it. What I think happened was my autism brain was like, hey, you know how we get overwhelmed sometimes. You know how we need a little structure because we're going to get overstimulated, and you've just come back from New York, which is overstimulating, but you're also like in this really good place of flow and presence and all of this stuff. So maybe, this is it still talking to me, maybe instead of trying to add that to your plate now, what's something you can get through that has a finite end date, that you can get through, that you can complete, that you can remove from your plate? And I swear it was doing these hand actions too, because it feels very, very real. But it's like, what can you remove from your plate? So then you feel clean and can actually pay proper attention to this next thing without feeling the overwhelm. It's a very good point. That little piece of my brain has. So in the last 2 weeks, the previous 2 weeks, I thought, okay, well, there's these 2 assessments. I mean, it was very easy, right? It was an easy sort of process, which is why it's easy to explain. It's not always going to be easy. It's going to be nuanced sometimes. But the last 2 weeks, I said, well, I had these, I said to myself, right, me, myself, and I'm like, I have these 2 assessments left. One is due this coming Monday. This was the thought process. So one is due this coming Monday at the time. The other is due the following Monday. But I have stuff on that weekend before that makes me just want to have like time off on the weekend. So I want to actually be done before the weekend. Cool. And I need this other assessment to be done obviously before Monday, because that's when it's due, like this coming Monday. But if I really want to just give myself at least a day, I try and have one day off, one solid day off without work a week. If I can't have 2, it's a minimum of 1. And because New York was a business trip, I was working, but I was also, exploring. I don't really know how to categorize that as far as time off, but I wanted like just downtime at home, comfortable. So I worked backwards. Went, okay, obviously these are the priorities because there is a time limit on them, and nothing else is going to be, apart from this new thing, nothing else is going to require as much attention and time as getting these assessments done. That is also not sooner than these due. So it was a really easy process to go, okay, if I get these done, if I just knuckle down and get these done now, that's going to free me up. And it felt like an exhale. You went, oh, cool. So I knuckled down. I got the first one done by, I want to say I got the first one done by that Friday. I'm going to say it was that Friday. So 3 days before it was due. So I did that. Great. Awesome. Worked out the structure and the framework for the next one. So then I felt ready. which is another tip as well. I would never leave the computer without leaving future me like a morsel of something that future me could just pick up and go, oh, that's where I was, and run with it. So it was the structure, and it was also the research was sitting there ready. So all that future me had to do at that point in time was when she came back to that next assessment, I went, oh, where was I? Because I would spend task switching is really hard. So I would spend a lot of time otherwise trying to figure that out. So then I set that up. I did the thing over the weekend. I went, cool, I can start that on Monday because it's not due for another week, but I'm going to have it done by Friday because I want the weekend off. Great. I knuckled down. This was the point that I could have gotten caught up in overwhelm. Could have been really, really easy to do that. For whatever reason, there was a lot happening. There's a whole household to I was going to say run. It's just to clean, to organize, to maintain, right? So like there's a lot. And I could have stepped into overwhelm then and gone, oh, there's so much to do. There's so much to do. And that is not a lie. It wouldn't be a fib. I'll tell you that. But I just focused on, all right, what can I do? And so what do I need? All right, I need something off my plate. Literally that. I need something off my plate. So I focused on the thing that would create the most impact in that way, which was the assessments. Because there was a due date anyway, it made it easier, but it was also something that I could go, cool, that is ticked off. As I record this, as I do this, this is the day after that assessment was due. So I'm done with uni until sometime in February or March. It is now end of October. So I have months, 4 months I have. Great. So I used that as my focus. I used that as my way to focus and to attend to and just go, okay, this is what I need. I'm just going to get this done. It was a little bit of a push in the sense of I really had to schedule time and I really had to focus during that scheduled time. And because of everything else had to be scheduled. There is such a thing as overscheduling yourself, even for autistic brains. Even if you like routine, there is such a thing as overscheduling yourself. And I'm very aware of that for myself too. And I was mirroring that, except I knew that if I focused during the scheduled time, then I wouldn't have to add more scheduled time for this task. It would be complete. And I got that done on the Thursday. I wasn't quite happy with it, but I didn't really know what else I would do with it. I was like, well, I guess let's see. I always try and sleep on an assignment. So I'll in the sense of I'll complete it, but I try and make it so I have time to let it rest. So I let it rest for a day, overnight. And I reread it on the Friday and went, actually, I'm pretty happy with this. We'll see how it comes out, but I'm pretty happy with this. And I submitted, and then I had my weekend. When I tell you that the clarity and inspiration that is coming to me this week by creating, so what I needed, so this whole thing is titled like how to prioritize to create more of what you need. What I needed was time, which would give me energy, so I needed time and space. Since then, I've become so much clearer on things that are coming. I've become so much clearer on this new, very potential opportunity that I now get to explore, which I which admittedly, I haven't reread the thing since. I've thought about it a lot. I haven't gone back and reread it because I'm percolating. But I've become clearer. I've had some really clear inspiration around that and a clarity of thought around it, which wasn't coming beforehand. It wasn't accessible to me beforehand. So that has happened. I have become clearer in some other things that I want to set up for the new year. Just things that are going to support me to support my clients even more and give more value, even more value. But I have become clearer and I have felt more inspired. There is an argument to be made that because I went on a trip, on holiday, not a holiday, but I changed my environment. That is why there is an argument to be made, because New York is just a creative vortex, that is where it's come from. And I guarantee it definitely helped. I definitely had a lot of clarity there too. But I'm in a place where I can start to enact it. So it's even clearer now. Here is the point, if you haven't gotten it already. If there is something that you need, choose to, and it's about prioritizing to get there, choose to do the thing that creates more of what you need, even if it's hard. So mine was a really easy example because there was a due date anyway. It was like, okay, that's big, but it was a due date. So it was really easy to go, cool, that's going to be due anyway, so I may as well focus on that. But choose to do the thing or to let go of the thing. There is a scenario where that is the outcome too, to either do the thing or let go of the thing that creates more of what you need, that creates space for what you need, whether that is space and time or something different. It seems really obvious, but sometimes we need to hear the example, and sometimes we need to have that in order to actually find the context for ourselves. Do the thing that creates more of what you need, or let go of the thing. Do the thing could be the action of letting go. Do the thing could be taking space out. So I spent soul time on the weekend in many different ways, and one of them, well, actually both days I drove up the coast for a visit and then back again. One of those was to spend an afternoon doing yoga with my dear friend who started as my first yoga teacher ever. So that was doing something that created more of what I needed. It is also a luxury and a privilege to be able to take a whole afternoon out for myself. I recognize that. Another thing then was, well, it's every morning for me, is sitting outside with my dogs and while I have breakfast and just breathing, just being present. That could be a 10-minute process. That could be a half-hour process, depending on what you have. That is what I need because it fills up my cup. It creates energy. By taking space, it created energy for me, or it creates energy for me. So let this context help you. Your example may not be exactly my example, but let it help you. I know this can be a nuanced conversation, which is why I do offer one-on-one private coaching and wellbeing consulting for individuals, for teams, for workplaces, all of these things. If that is something that is useful for you, please reach out at info@j-leigh.com.au. Reach out if you're interested in a consult about that, because that is where I get to go into the nuance with you and just support and find what does support you there. So that is an option, but otherwise, let this support you. Let this help you. Let this be a guide and a reminder. You don't get more of what you need unless you choose it. And sometimes you have to choose the path there. So thank you guys. Next week, I'm going to have some lovely guests starting to come on again. And I'm very excited for this first conversation. So I will talk to you then.